welcome to another edition of For the Record. I'm Sean Murphy. My guest today is Miranda. She's a returning guest from Miranda Creative, and oddly enough, she's the creative director of Miranda Creative. So welcome back to the show.
Great, nice to be here.
Now, we'll sort of kind of give people a recap of like the last time you were on the show. Miranda Creative, as a company, what is it?
We are a full-service marketing and communications firm with a core strength in social and new media, which is very much in demand these days.
When you're talking about marketing and promotion and sales, the world isn't your father's world anymore, is it?
No, not at all.
Your dad might not even be aware of the impact that social media has today on society in general.
Yes. You know, funny you should say that. My father was a potato chip salesman. I don't know if you knew that. You know, and so I think about what he would have done if social media was available to him to move Cheetos and Doritos kind of thing. It's a very, very different world. Instantaneous, especially when it comes to social media. It
affects news and the transmission of news and the reporting of news because, you know, your typical news broadcast on the radio or TV or the newspaper in general can't keep up with the immediacy of online and social media in general, like Facebook and Twitter, but also even their regular websites.
I've often witnessed members of the media being in a contest of time to get in front of the consumers who are there at that moment and looking to share. I've witnessed my media friends rushing right away to try to get something out first, because everyone contributes to content now.
Doesn't that create a problem, though, an inherent danger of not properly vetting the source and that sort of thing?
Absolutely. Accuracy. I mean, how many rumors have we seen of so-and-so is dead?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, how terrible is that?
You stop believing that stuff.
Can you imagine receiving a tweet about your own demise?
Right. Yeah. I've done it myself a couple. No, I'm kidding. You know, it's funny. My director, he's big into sports, and you know, he was commenting on. You know, sports and Twitter these days are synonymous. And the reporters and the media that cover it, it's synonymous. It's right out there. They'll put it on Twitter, like a reporter, and I think their own company, their own newspaper, at least before, frowned upon that because they would prefer that they, as a news organization, be the ones to report it. But you can't avoid Twitter because if he doesn't post it, somebody else will.
Someone else will beat them to it. And then someone else will retweet, you know, and share and make it the most popular. So they actually have to work with the momentum. They have to work with the sumo, so to speak. And they're better off having that.
To be a part of it than not be a part of it, because then you're a dinosaur, right?
Right, exactly. And also people choose to follow individuals more so than brands. So smart brands have their personalities be in the front of it because there's a greater sense of trust that comes from an individual. You know, even the icon is an individual compared to it being a logo or a brand. And they believe and have greater sense of trust and faith in that person.
I'll give you one example that just popped into my mind yesterday because, you know, it's a fad. Everybody loves it. But, you know, the people who create the Geico commercials, the Camel commercial, just absolutely went viral.
It did. It did immediately. That wonderful hump day. Hey, Mike. Hey, Mike. What day is it?
It's just fantastic.
Yes. I mean, we even joked a few times on the agency Facebook page. We've been posting our favorite camel photos just to see if people would immediately get the relationship to the campaign, and they did.
Now, for those that approach Miranda Creative, are there clients of yours that you have had to sort of, you know, they want to utilize your services? Have you had to sort of introduce them to the world of social media? Were they a little bit out of touch with the reality of today's marketing and media in general?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, you know, let's think about it. The decision makers in marketing, as you know, are often individuals of the boomer generation.
So they're getting older.
They've earned that place. I'm among that generation as well. And they've earned that place and that level of respect. But at the same time, they stepped into the industry way before this came forward. And so their first steps is for themselves to get up to speed, to understand what they're working with, right? I say to them the most popular time to be on the radio is drive time, right? The best day in the newspaper for readership is Sunday. The most popular social media to reach males between the ages of 18 and 25, blank. So the first step is for them to get as much as knowledge base and comfort with that as possible.
Are they, people in general have a tendency to be resistant to change though? So do you sort of have to kind of tug them along a little bit in a certain sense?
Well, if they're reaching out to me,
they want to.
You know, they've admitted the first step in the issue, right?
I have a problem. I need to advance.
I need to advance, right? And they understand that. You know, if I call on them and say, look, you know, I see that you are drowning in social media. Do you need some help? they might be more reticent. But so if they reach out to me, we've done our first step that they know they need to do something about it. And then the rest of it is the fact I share with them, I'm also a boomer. I'm not some 20-something kid. I've been 25 years in business. They're like, okay, I trust you to be able to help me move this forward, and they do.
But with your clients, it's not just, I mean, you specialize in social media and that kind of cutting edge kind of marketing, but you also do traditional stuff with them too, right? It's in conjunction with.
It's in conjunction. It absolutely is the mix. There isn't going to be one media that's going to resolve all of your issues, because not one media appeals to all audiences. It has to be part of the mix. So we talk to them about it being holistic to make sure that they still maintain a budget for traditional, start investigating and growing into social, and measure everything.
It wasn't that long ago that you were on this show, and maybe it's social media, but the world travels much faster than it used to. Maybe even a year ago. So speaking just in the sense of social media, have there been big changes from the last time you were on the show?
Oh, since Monday.
Never mind the last time you were on the show.
I mean, there's been, it's been a tremendous amount of changes. I think the reason we have this little hashtag symbol here between us, we'll do a tug of war over it, is that, this symbol has become synonymous with all social media. It used to be something that was just used for Twitter.
Right. It's huge. This is huge. Did they invent the hashtag, basically? Or,
Come on, we know that they didn't, because we grew up, it was on our phone.
That's right, or on our keyboard of our typewriter, not the computer, but the typewriter.
The typewriter, and it was the pound symbol, right? Or the number symbol, or that kind of.
You don't call this pound anymore, you call it a hashtag.
I know, we should try to explain that to anybody who's a boomer, right? So this has become synonymous with social media, so much so that, how you used to see little bullets, in ads, now what you see is a hashtag symbol in ads.
Right.
And it's become a way for people to search on all media.
This is the quintessential networking symbol, because, it was just Twitter. Basically, if you clicked on anything, any word that had the hashtag in front of it, it would click you into another display of everybody that had that same. So it was a new network. Now, other social networks like Facebook have adopted. It's so popular they've adopted this as well.
They have.
Instagram has adopted it.
Exactly. As I shared with you, we have an agency mascot who's a black lab, right? Who, as you know, is a hunting dog, right? A searching dog. And so I reinforce that for clients. We named a tool that's used to search. We named our black lab after it, because exactly what that is. It's a search engine tool. You type in hashtag and a word, and it will come up as search results across all medias. Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, everywhere will tell you what's going on. And the more hashtags you have in your favor, then you're what's called trending.
Right, and that's a big deal too, because that means that many more people are plugged into what's going on with the word that's right next to that hashtag.
Exactly.
Right?
And sometimes it can be a word.
Right.
Sometimes it can be an abbreviation of letters, right? Sometimes it can be an argument. And I love seeing that people adopt that and they carry that argument forward.
That's good.
Yes.
Like man versus whatever.
Exactly.
That could be the argument, and if everybody is involved in that conversation, everybody else's page will see it. They'll click on it, and then all of a sudden they join it. And that's why one of the things that we talked about last time when you're on the show is a website certainly is important and necessary for any business, but it's static. Whereas their social, if they have a if they have just a regular website but don't have a Facebook or Twitter page, there's so much more networking involved in the social media aspect as opposed to your website.
I explain to clients two terms. One is passive and one is proactive. Right, a website is passive.
Right.
The content resides there, and if people go to it, they will see it. Social media is proactive. It's about pushing out the message, but it should absolutely reside on a website as a point of origin. So you drive people past that front door, and they might see your specials, your product,
That's
your
Portal,
capability.
right?
It is your portal.
So you wouldn't necessarily recommend somebody go direct to create a Facebook page for their business but not have a website?
Exactly. And many question that. They question the time and the resources, and the search is king.
Right. That's true. Yeah.
Yes, and some aspects of Facebook are closed, but a website is never. right? You have to have a Facebook profile to see everything going on there, but a website is universal, so you absolutely have to have it.
So what else would you say to a client or a potential client to get started? Do you have to, the ones that aren't necessarily plugged into social media, you kind of have to get them up to speed, but those that are, what kind of things are they into and you into to just get creative with their product or their business?
It's a good question. Again, we're going to assume that they have some sense of faith in it.
Right.
We begin with that. And then we talk about the necessity for universal branding across all social. So the first place I take them, like you were joking with me, how everything for me was Miranda Creative. The website, our Twitter address, our Facebook
domain
page.
Name,
domain
everything.
name.
Yeah.
So the first place we have to take them is a universal place for everything. Start with that. Because it becomes very confusing if you're one name on social, on Facebook, one name on Twitter, a different domain.
You're just not going to remember all your names on cyberspace.
You won't, and people will look for you and find someone else and shut down and don't bother anymore. So we start with that basic behavior. And that's actually pretty challenging these days. There's so little that's available that hasn't been taken in some way, shape, or form. So getting that done first. And then we talk about commitment of resources and talent. Social media is actually about community management. So there has to be, individuals involved, whether outsourced or internal, who are ready to handle that. It's not about placing an ad and with the phone ringing. It's about immediate responsiveness. Okay?
Has social media come to the point, like everybody loves it, they're on it all the time, but there are phrases that pop up nowadays called, things like Facebook fatigue.
Yes.
Talk about that a little bit.
Every form of media will have its highs and lows, and audiences will grow and will change. The population that everybody thought was on Facebook or leaned towards Facebook to achieving was that younger group of population.
Right. They all came from MySpace, by the way.
They all came from MySpace, began in 2004 with Zuckerberg. They've now migrated to different forms of media because Facebook became adopted by a different generation. The average Facebook user is a 53-year-old female.
No kidding.
Yes.
Wow.
Right? And so, I'm sorry, the 18-year-old, 20-year-old's not going to want to hang out with their mom. Right? They aren't. And so they
they're
migrate.
going to be friends with them then on Facebook.
Definitely not. Where they are is they are on applications on their phones, like Feed, P-H-E-E-D, or they are using Twitter, which I see a real great resurgence in that.
Yeah, so I wanted to ask you about that. It's not, you could use social media in the generic term, or in the generic sense, but if you really want to get into the nuts and bolts of it, people might shy away from Facebook because they're more of a Twitter person. And people might have their specific, maybe more business, you might be more LinkedIn. So talk about the specifics of social media.
When I describe it to clients that are new to social media, I talk about how there's, imagine a sink with lots of faucets, right? And you choose which one you want to go to, right? Social media is much like that. You can have something running on every faucet, but the audience will choose which media works for them. And there's stats now available that talk about LinkedIn being definitely more about a professional business relationship, business
You
to
could
business.
see that right off the start with them. It's about business.
It's about business. Well, it was really about resumes in 2008.
Exactly, yeah.
Help me find a job.com, right? Facebook is really more of a feminine dominant media. Lots of images,
Casual, social.
lots of emotion.
Put your pictures of your baby up.
Yeah, lots of empathy, lots of sharing, right? And Twitter, of course, is 140 characters. Get it done, tell me about it, get out.
Their idea was like what you could put on a text is exactly what you
they
put
had
on
that.
Yeah.
Exactly. And it's all related to the search strings in Google, et cetera, which reads about 160 characters. Twitter went a little bit less than that. So that's all about brevity and efficiency, emotion and empathy, professionalism and branding.
Right, because Facebook, you can really, people go off on tangents on that, and that's where some of the fatigue could get in because you're really kind of, it's not to the point where MySpace became like a little kids with far too much HTML coding in the background and their song playing.
Right.
But it's interesting that Facebook started out, one of the things I think people complain about, and I understand this too about Facebook specifically, there's been a lot of changes since the beginning, and I understand updating, but some of it seems to be for the sake of generating revenue, ad stuff, but also the formatics of it have changed, and sometimes for a while it got a little slow and clunky and just annoying a little bit.
Yes, and heaven forbid, a media actually generate revenue, right?
Right.
And I remind clients on a regular basis that just because it's social media, the prominent term there is media, and it is designed to generate revenue. It does have advertising, it does have a purpose behind it, and sure, they're annoyed by that, but it has to be funded.
Right.
Think about the magic of Facebook. Someone has to be paying for the programming that's happening.
That's very true. But there is a way, I think, to do it less intrusively than I think they've just the Zuckerberg's ideas and stuff. Some of them it seems like have worked, others haven't. And I also have to say that Facebook has grabbed a lot of ideas from Twitter along the way too, because
Sure.
they
And
when
Instagram.
exactly, when they started out, they actually didn't have a status update. That was a Twitter thing.
Yep.
Now all of a sudden, as we talked about, they use the hashtag.
Yep. I think they're smart to see what works and
What
to bring
works,
it forward.
yeah.
I mean, they bought Instagram.
Right.
I mean, you talk about understanding what works and to actually adopt it. So they look to do that. I tell my clients as advertisers that there's absolutely nothing wrong with running ads on a social media environment, but to do it within reason. Right.
Right.
There's absolutely nothing wrong with that.
It works as far as you're concerned.
It's very, very, very effective. The click-through rate for social media ads, especially on Facebook, is like 300 times larger than other media.
And you can localize them too. It doesn't necessarily have to go to, if your company is in, the Northeast, you don't have to have necessarily people in California seeing your
Completely.
ad. So you can really regionalize it.
Geographically,
Yeah.
demographically, I mean, you can find nothing but curly-haired women in Eastern Connecticut if you wanted to advertise to them specifically.
Sounds like a dating site. Oh, they have those out
They
there
have those
too.
too.
Yeah,
They do.
yeah.
That's a whole different conversation. We have
Yeah.
another half an hour for that. Yeah.
All right, so we talked about the hashtag. So there's a story behind this coffee mug that's on your table too.
So the agency's corporate colors is Pantone value, and we went around and basically brought every single Pantone 484 mug that exists in the United States, and we have them all in our office. And so I bring it with me anywhere I go, and I'm happy to leave one here with you for a little memento
Thank
of
you
our
very
visit.
much. Yeah.
Absolutely.
It will certainly get filled with beverages for sure.
Oh, I'm sure it will.
Yeah, maybe it already has. So as we're taping the show, we talked about some of the changes about what's going on with Facebook and Twitter. How about trending, as we get into the next year? What do you see?
Well, everything is going to be about this.
Right.
About the
And
mobile
we didn't even
devices.
let's talk about smartphones and tablets and the apps that are on them, because that is huge right now.
It is incredibly huge. I mean, first thing for everyone to realize and hold on to is that more than 50% of all social media viewing is happening on mobile devices.
By the way, here's another stat for you. Smartphones finally outsold dumb phones for the first time
The
ever.
featured phones.
Yeah.
Let's be polite out
Okay,
there.
dumb phone. Oh, you can call it a smartphone. Our director's showing his dumb phone right now, so he still has one. So,
Well, they're called a featured phone, so we don't.
Right.
Everyone has their need for phone
right,
devices.
we don't. Yeah, if you have a feature phone, that doesn't mean you're dumb.
Doesn't mean you're smart
Right.
either.
You might be smart considering how much these cost.
Exactly, but it's a matter of efficiency and time for a lot of people. So more than 50% of social media is happening on here, right? Which, to keep that in mind for brevity of your content, right? The other thing that's much more frightening is somewhere in the nature of about 80% of mobile Google searching is happening here. Well, Google searching is happening through here. So that means that all deliverable content needs to be mobile compatible, mobile sites, mobile views on your site. It's going to control
Absolutely necessary,
everything.
yeah.
Everything is going to be impacted by this.
I think tablets are beginning to really, I don't know if they outsell or not, but really cutting into the laptop market now, because a tablet is just more convenient for people.
It's embedded. The applications and your typing experience can be combined together, which I think is part of the reason you're seeing the tablets come forward so much. So you can pass it to Angry Bird for your kids while you're waiting in line, and then take it back into your emails. It's a combined media. So it is going to continue to grow and impact. And the results are going to be the need for sites to be what's called responsive on top of that. Do you know what a responsive site is?
What is that exactly? Oh, when you can, it's not necessarily, it's more interactive. You order or respond or comment to.
That's a very good interpretation of it, but what it really means is that the website responds to the technology accessing it. So it delivers one view on this phone, a different
gotcha.
view on a tablet, and the expectations of consumers are going to be about that.
And I would imagine it's less expensive for developers, where they can kind of just develop for a responsive app that will just see what you're viewing it on and automatically adjust, right?
I think the benefit for the businesses would be if they invest in responsive now, they can continue to adopt the site based on new technology, right? So upfront, it'll be probably more costly to go responsive, but in the long term, you won't need to be doing it 4 or 5 times.
Right.
So yeah, there's savings eventually.
And obviously the carriers of the smartphones are smart enough to realize that the revenue generation comes from data now and not from calls and texts. So these plans that they offer now, they just give you the calls and texts unlimited.
Exactly.
It's the data that costs money, because that's the gold mine for
And that's
them.
what you want.
Yeah.
Right. You want to download that song. You want to download that video on YouTube to watch and see what everyone's sharing, and that is where their revenue is going to be happening. So consumers need to be wise about use of their time and also the privacy settings on their phone.
Very important.
Yeah, big controversy right now over the photos
Yep.
and people knowing exactly where you are.
Yeah, but you can turn, there's obviously settings that you can turn off. You just have to be aware of it in the first place and understand how you can turn it off. Right?
Exactly. And also the phone may have one set of settings and social media may have another. So also be aware that any messages you're sending back and forth on social media, you can tell where they're coming from.
Exactly.
And that's the application base, not the phone base.
You know, that person that might be behind the eight ball a little bit as far as being up to date with social media, they probably also may not necessarily have a smartphone either. So they are as clueless about, you know, what apps are and what you can do with a smartphone, just as they are with Facebook or Twitter or something like that, right?
And I think, you know, I'll say we, because of the boomer generation, I think we have to fight that. I think it's very easy for us to sort of say, I refuse to adapt any further, and eventually you don't relate to what's happening with the world around you. So I think that, you know, there's wonderful programs, adult education programs. We do programs on a regular basis at Miranda Creative about staying aware and on top of what's happening with mobile devices, new media, social media, because you're better off for it.
Yeah.
You know, your grandkids are going to be out there. You're going to want to see what's going on.
I'm sure there's a lot of, you know, that generation that, you know, has their grandkid set up their smartphone for them in the first place, create a Facebook page or a Twitter page for them in the first place, and then our people never go on it in the first, you know, they just never go on it. So you sort of have like classes, or you teach people that, huh?
On a regular basis, we have a variety of programs, and one of my favorite is the social media for the older and wiser that we do at assisted living communities across the U.S. And I love that. I love going into those environments and, you know, watching a 70, 80-year-old learn how to be able to text their grandmother or their grandchildren.
Is it something that they might be doing for the first time?
Many times
is
for
that
the
right?
first
Yeah.
time. You know, and I love when instantaneously the grandchild texts back and they're like, oh, that is
Wow, it's
just
like they're right
great.
there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, how was school today? I just love watching it happen.
You know, we've talked about social media in terms of Facebook, Twitter. We've talked about, you know, the technology of smartphones and tablets and the apps that are on them. What else is there that we might be missing that could fall into that general genre of what's now or up and coming?
I think Instagram, the whole two things that are up and coming. The whole idea of video sharing is going to be a very big trend.
And that's pretty much what Instagram is, along with photos, right?
Right. So Instagram adopted videos recently, and also there's a resource called Vine, which is a 6-second video, and there's 4 or 5 options within that. So what I see happening, and for people to be aware of, is this whole idea of image sharing, whether it's static or mobile, and to be aware of that. Right. So, you know, looking for wonderful opportunities for family photos, to have a plan in place for sharing them and the right privacy settings for that. On the business side, to look at that as being a consumer marketing tool. You know, pictures of your food if you're a restaurant, you know, happy images of employees, you know, working for a few seconds if you're also about goodwill in the community. That's going to be a very big trend moving forward and something to really adopt.
You know, we've touched on this throughout the show so far, but let's talk about concerns of privacy and the ability for social media in general, whether it's sites like Twitter or Facebook or, you know, on your phone, the ability for bad things to happen, the dangers involved with it too that people should be aware of.
Well, there's always two sides of social media. There's the business brand side and there's the consumer side. Okay. Let's cover business brand real quick. Right? Social media is not to be messed with or try to control too much. There have been 4 or 5 incidences of where brands try to pretend their pages have been hacked and everyone realizes that they have not been, and they call them on it, and just bad behavior. So for the business side, I recommend to be genuine and transparent. Right? Don't try to mess with people.
Right.
Don't try to make or control social media. You're not going to do so. On the consumer side, I think, you know, parents need to sit down and have some good dialogues with their kids. Facebook has some good privacy settings that can be controlled. Twitter does not. Twitter is very, very much out there. It's public, as you know, public domain. It can be easily found and tracked. You know, and they're going to regret some of the things that they're saying or sharing when it comes time for job opportunities.
Because even though you delete it somewhere, someplace, it still
capture,
exists. Yeah.
Yeah, the Wayback Machine, it's called. You can go back in time and find things people have done.
Yeah.
Yeah. So parents, you know, have an obligation to their children to explain to them what's happening and what this can mean, and therefore that means they have an obligation to become educated themselves.
Would you recommend that in certain cases, depending on the maturity level of the child, that maybe they shouldn't maybe it's hard to avoid it completely, but not have a Facebook page? Or?
It's really impossible for parents to do that. I mean,
I
they can
know,
go
it
to
really is.
they can go to a public library and to
Yep.
do one. They can change
their phone,
they can
yeah.
change profiles in their friends' phones
Right.
and open an account, right? So you're best off, as my mom would say, you're best off, grabbing a hand to walk the street, start teaching them really early about safety. Talk to them about it early on before they start getting a phone, so they understand what the risks are.
In general, though, do you see a bright future for social media overall?
One of the most popular and demanding jobs out there is called a community manager. And we spend a great deal of our time training community managers for organizations. And it's a wonderful role. It's a person who carries the voice of the organization out to a community. So all these young people who are experiencing social media now, there's going to be great careers for them to serve in that capacity within an organization.
Let's give out Miranda Creative's website.
Sure. It's mirandacreative.com.
Just keeping it
Just-
simple,
just
right?
keeping it simple,
What's on the
yeah.
website that people can see?
Sure, there's samples of our work. There's links to all of our social media. Imagine that, right?
I see you on Facebook,
And there's a
so-
blog. And our mascot hashtag has his own Twitter feed. It's @hashwag.
Hashwag,
Yeah,
oh, very
he
nice.
passed a BD in school, so he's now allowed to tweet.
Wow, nice.
Yeah.
And just as I don't know if this is a bit of irony or not, but Maria and I communicated via Facebook when we confirmed the show here, and,
Yeah.
and just a reminder to have you come in. So, and as we sit here, there's texts coming in on your
course,
phone because
of
you're a
course.
busy woman. Well, thanks for coming back on the show.
Sure.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, wonderful to see you again.
You too, and we'll have you back again soon. Miranda, Creative Director for Miranda Creative.
Thank you very much.
And thank you for joining us for another edition of For the Record. I'm Sean Murphy. You can see this show and many others. We didn't even talk about YouTube. That was another huge
come
thing.
back for that.
But you can watch this show on YouTube and many others. We'll see you next time. Take care.